Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my co-host and good friend, Matt Goddard. Matt, how you doing?
Morning, Mal. I'm doing great. It's great to be back. And you're positively glowing. You must have had a great bank holiday.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was down on Bournemouth Beach for much of it, and it was toasty. But yeah, good. How was your holiday up in the depths of the northeast?
Absolutely delightful. And obviously, we've had some scattered conversations during the course of that. But yeah, really restful. Good to be back in London, but also missing that opportunity to just step out and run along the beach in the morning with the dog and dip in the water to refresh.
Very nice. Oh. Yes, it is back to the grindstone for us. We're recording this on the morning of Tuesday, the 26th of August. And yeah, a lot has been happening after our kind of conversation last week about nothing really happening in property. There's been some big stuff. So let us get stuck in right away to our property news. All right, it's all about tax, isn't it? The topic that most people love to hate. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the UK government, has been dropping many hints about changes to property taxation. Three different ones, really. So looking at stamp duty, looking at council tax, and then a little look at the capital gains tax too. Matt, let's start with stamp duty, because that's the one obviously that's most directly associated with the transactions in the property market. The rumor is that it's going to switch in the budget that's coming up should be late October. It's going to switch from being paid by buyers to sellers. What's your take on this? Is this just a bit of smoke and kind of noise just to see what the reaction is to this, or do you think it's serious?
Well, I think that's the biggest part of it, isn't it, Mal? And obviously, we've both been away, and I've been away for a bit longer. This landed just as we were recording the pod last week, actually. The sort of noise around it started, the old jungle drums. And whilst it might be a case that the government's slipping this out to test the waters and see what people's feeling is around it, obviously the industry quite quickly started to raise concerns, I think more so around how much of an impact it'd have on people actually engaging while they wait to see what's actually happening and how that's going to temper the market. And obviously being off for the last, it's a week, isn't it now, since it's got leaked. I don't know if that's actually started to be seen. I guess we wait for Chris Watkin and his latest set of stats, and obviously other good market commentators out there as well. It was one side of the argument, isn't it, that if sellers are making the profit from the increase in their property, and obviously not everybody sells their property at an increase, then why not move the tax onto that side? But it's pretty significant shift. But then again, if we're going to change the way that our industry works and try to improve some of the areas, we've got to get used to making some pretty significant shifts, haven't we?
Yeah, and I look at this like you. It does feel a little bit like flying kites and just seeing what kind of response is drawn out of it. I think broadly, a lot of people within the industry have said that it's interesting and could work, and the big but as you say, it's just going to depress movement in the market until we know more. And I think the Chancellor has to give 10 weeks notice to Parliament before she does her budget. We're already looking at the end of October, and that's if she does it now. So it's going to start moving into sort of November and even further out. So yeah, look, I think broadly it makes sense. It seems like it's a reasonably decent idea. Obviously, the level is going to be the interesting thing. I can't imagine the overall tax take is going to be lower. I think it must be higher, and that means that it will necessarily put off some discretionary sales, I'm sure. But as you say, it's more about the whole thing, right? The actual system itself is really tied up and slow and ponderous, particularly in England and Wales. Obviously, in Scotland, it's different. So, yeah, I think if it is tied up with an overall overhaul of the process and the actual how property is bought and sold in England and Wales, then that's great. But if it is just a kind of deck chair maneuvering exercise, then it just feels a little bit like it's just a bald tax raising opportunity rather than anything more significant. And then looking at the sort of council tax thing and whether that entire system is going to change as well. Again, we haven't changed this since 1991. The valuations of properties, whichever band your property ends up in, was locked in 1991, the value of your property back then, which obviously, 34 years later will have changed dramatically. People have extended, people of different areas have boomed and other areas haven't quite so much. Yeah, I think it's obviously time to look at that again. But again, is this just going to be an excuse to increase the amount of tax that comes off it? And then finally, there's the capital gains tax idea, which seems to be that whereas your primary home doesn't qualify for capital gains tax, they're looking at whether to drop that. And that is an absolute storm of protest has come from that, where everybody's just gone pretty much mental because yeah, they feel that is without doubt going to squash the number of properties that come to market.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the capital gains has already got people's eyes focused anyway, hasn't it? Because of the fact that our country as a whole with entrepreneurs seems to be forcing entrepreneurs away. And obviously that's capital gains from a slightly different angle. But
Yeah.
the fact that a lot of businesses sell as quickly as they can and move overseas and the investment comes from overseas. So whatever goes on around capital gains tax or CGT. But the recalibration of council tax is an interesting one that has been obviously so long since they looked at that property. It almost feels like it's not just a do it now and recalibrate, but it needs to have a recurring piece of work to make sure it stays current. And it's not try to do it every year, because I appreciate it's a massive piece of work they'll have to do. But if we knew that every 5 years, every 10 years, this was going to happen and it was going to keep everyone up to date, then we become aware of that rather than just we're going to do it now, raise a load of taxes for the budget. And it's slightly akin to when I was at Repit and we did price increases for the first time. And this was something that had always been in the contract but never been actioned. And because we've gone 10, 15 years of using the software but never had a price increase, people are a bit obviously put out by it because you haven't budgeted for it, you didn't take it into account, and suddenly you've got that notification. Whereas if some of the sort of big corporates said to me, if you tell me this is going to happen every year, then we can budget for it. We're aware it's in the contract and therefore we'll be working around it. I think if something similar came in with the council tax, so you know that your property is always going to be up to date. Because it's not always extensions and such. It might be that your area's gone down slightly and that therefore you get that balance.
Yeah, exactly. And I completely agree. I remember when we were set up Zoopla and when we got our automated valuation model up and running, and there was a lot of interest from government and elsewhere in that, and whether that could help them to revalue properties. Even back then, that was 2008. So it's been kicked down the road for decades now because it's such a thorny issue and obviously a massive vote loser. But yeah, like you, I think you just got to bite the bullet. You just got to get on with it, and you just got to let people know that this is just a routine kind of thing. And if you have built the equivalent of a granny flat out in the backyard, then you might have to pay a little bit more than you were before. So yeah, so lots of that obviously still to come as we go through the next few weeks. I think for me, the worst thing is going to be the uncertainty. And this also comes down to there's going to be this big kickback. Everybody's going to shout and scream about it. There's already quite a lot of stuff in the press, even in the dog days of summer, with people saying this is an outrage and it's going to absolutely kill the market. And the worst thing for me would be that they run up to the budget, it's all flat because everybody's worried about it. Then the budget comes and then they announce this thing, and then 4 weeks later they then have to U-turn on it because of the storm of uproar. And they've shown themselves willing to do that in the past, and that worries me because then that's just the whole of this, the next quarter, one of the busiest seasons in property every year, which has just had some of the opportunity taken off it. So yeah, look, it's looking another series of weeks of wondering about what's going to happen. But yeah, hopefully when they just make the decision, get on with it, and then we can just crack on. Everybody knows exactly where they stand. Fingers crossed. It might not happen like that because let's face it, it hasn't happened like that very often. But look, we live in hope. All right. So next up on our property news, there's a couple of interesting articles, particularly how AI is becoming a lot more mainstream. And you found this particular article on one of the AI businesses down in Australia about they got onto to essentially the equivalent of the breakfast show.
That's exactly it. As you know, that I work over in Australia, New Zealand, and Dubai. So my week actually started yesterday. So while you were still tanning on the beach in Bournemouth, I was catching up with some of the teams over there. But this is a company, Propic, who without doing them a disservice, I would say I like the Australian version of Model Prop, and they've made it onto their morning show, which I was trying to remember what our ones are called. I was thinking of, is it Philip Schofield and
Good
Holly?
morning, Britain.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
And I'm sure there's Dealey and someone doing them now, but they're on
yeah.
that equivalent Good Morning show with the banner saying AI and real estate. And it's a decent segment where they talk through and go on site showing how AI and specifically Propic, who do virtual home staging and lead response conversations and sort of customer journeys with AI. And we talked about them before. I think it's 2018, 2019. I first became aware of a guy called David Choi who used to work for Domain and had moved over to Propic. So they've been in AI before a lot of people knew about. I think that's around about ChatGPT 2 sort of time that they were getting started. So to see it so mainstream on the morning equivalent of our Good Morning Britain, and obviously educating not just the industry but the general consumer was quite insightful.
Yeah, look, I'd love to see it. I think the maturity of the AI industry is obviously increasing day by day, and just general awareness of it, I think, is going to become increasingly significant. And yeah, it's good to see that as you say, mainstream news bulletins are picking up some really solid stories about businesses that are really making a difference. And it shows some great stuff about virtual staging, which obviously we're big fans of ourselves. And yeah, just to be able to understand how that is now becoming part of the mainstream conversation. I think it is really good. So, yeah, great to see that. And then, yeah, also, you said, again, from the other side of the world, you've got this really interesting piece about the data side of things and how the living room remains the most important place. And obviously, this is replicable over here in the UK.
Absolutely. So this is Ray White. So they're probably Australia, New Zealand's largest estate agency, about 1,500 offices. They did 128 billion of property transactions last year. They had their big Connect conference where they bring all of their franchisees together, and it was about 3 or 4 days up on the Gold Coast, which equivalent of me being in Cleethorpes for 2 weeks. They were up in Vegas and Surfers Paradise. I know you want to say
Very much
something.
the same vibe, I'm sure. Having
Absolutely.
seen you in that pub last week, yeah, I think.
That's it. I brought you some rock back as well. I have to save that until we meet up next week. But they had their conference, and Mark McLeod, who's industry trainer, but also their chief strategy, but did as part of his update to the associates and the business owners, principals as they call them, that the technology that they've built themselves, Nurture Cloud, which is coming over here, but in Australia and New Zealand is exclusive to Ray White. That technology is helping them get into homeowners' properties and growing their market share. I think it's grown 14% market share since they started using this technology. And he said the point is the technology is helping them get into the property, and actually the data they've reviewed is that once you're in the homeowner's property, you're 400% more likely to win that listing. So their technology is helping get people in that place where they've got the chance to actually impress the vendors at that stage. So really quite a bit of insight from, which we all know already, right? But it then comes down to that listing conversion skill.
Yeah, it is the number, isn't it? And yeah, no, I think when we've spoken often about AI, and I speak to agents day in, day out, and one of the big questions is AI going to replace that kind of human touch and the human presence? And I just think it's going to absolutely supercharge it. I think people are going to need human contact. They're going to crave it. They're going to want to. I think AI is going to be brilliant for mechanistic stuff, for repetitive tasks, all that sort of thing. But when it comes down to the human need to have somebody representing them in this biggest transaction in their lives, I think just like back in 2000, agents were worried about digital and the internet replacing them. There is a worry about AI replacing them. I think we're going to turn around in 25 years' time and find out there's been pretty much exactly the same, where agents are just as important. Yeah, I think that those stats about being in the living room and that personal touch, and yeah, the job now for agents, or the challenge now for agents, is finding people and making sure you are populated with people who are great people. And I think that's going to be the differentiator for all agents now, because AI will do most of the grunt work. It's the human touch piece that's going to be really important.
And it's having that human touch at the points all the way along the journey, right? So yes, getting in and doing the valuation and being face to face, having that chance to impress on people that you're the person for the job. But actually, even earlier on when you're trying to speak to someone, or if you're a property manager and you've got an issue, being able to hand off to that highly skilled employee to handle your specific case. I always look at different industries and how things are adopted, and I'm quite a pedant when it comes to how poor we've been on that digital front as an industry. Not a lot of people have online portals available. Obviously, people like Street have made it part of their offering from the start, but a lot of people are still lagging behind. We launched the My Foxtons portal back in 2009, but just over the weekend, I was dealing with Barclaycard, where the only interactions you could have was with their AI chat. And if the AI chat couldn't solve it, then it basically hung up on you and said, please call back on Monday, which obviously Monday didn't work because it's bank holiday. But then on the flip side, I was dealing with Amazon, where you couldn't, if you could find the link to start the conversation, then every opportunity you had the chance to speak to an advisor, and the advisor was actually a real person that you could chat to, or even get them to give you a call. Wow. Amazon's journey was a lot slicker, I guess you'd hope, to Barclaycard, but it was two very different implementations of AI at that stage.
And this is the problem, or one of the problems, is that many people will experience the Barclays thing and then will just assume that all AI is like that. And that, again, is one of the biggest kind of challenges I think that we've got as a sort of a nascent industry, is that there are as many different ways of implementing it. And you can be, just like a telephone system, or just like an employee, you can do it badly and you can have a terrible experience. But there is, again, we spend a lot of time developing these things so that they are absolutely brilliant and operate as if they are part of your enterprise. And yeah, if you do find yourself in a Barclays hole, then yeah, just know that there are other ones that give you a really decent experience out and about as well. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's dive into AI and tech news. So this week, dominated by one business, really, and that business is Google. Now, you and I were speaking off air about that this has really made quite a difference to our thinking around a lot of our personal tech, right? So just to set the scene, so Made by Google was their big event last week, and they really went to town on the whole promotion of it, the whole kind of delivery of loads and loads of different announcements. They had Jimmy Fallon, who's a late night talk show host over in the States. He was presenting it and trying to be a bit more everyman and helping consumers to understand what they were talking about. But yeah, Matt, what did you make of this?
I know that it got panned as being cringeworthy marketing and maybe a bit Hollywood, but actually, I think, as you say, that sort of every person approach to it to make everybody aware of exactly what's being released, not just geeks and nerds like you and me. I think you have to have an element of that, right? And it wasn't just Jimmy Fallon, was it? There was various other people in the lineup,
Yeah.
but it really did make me stop and think about, do I carry on with all the Apple products I've got? Because we know that Apple Intelligence has been struggling, and there's been a few updates this week to make it sound like maybe they're about on the brink of changing it around. And I know we're skeptical on that, but then Bard only a couple of years ago was pre-Gemini, right? And it was in a place where everyone thought, oh, Google's buggered this. And actually now they're absolutely at the cutting edge of everything. So well, let's not write Apple off, even though we're both writing Apple off. But Google's announcements were really slick, even to the extent of being able to ask Google's, is it Gems they've got where
Yeah,
they all
yeah,
connect?
yeah.
So being able to use AI on your phone in the way that we're getting used to using it on our laptops and have search across your apps. I think it's just Google apps to start with, but actually have them work together. The one that stood out for me, we talked a few weeks ago about Google Meet are now having a live translation option in it, but actually with Pixel 10, you can have live translation while you're actually with your phone in the bar in Spain, as we will be in the middle of next month and actually the month after next, and actually have the live translation of us trying to order the tapas again or whatever we decide to do. So there's some really useful technology that's being announced and is available now.
Yeah, listen, like you, this is the first time probably since the iPhone came out that I've actually started to question my tech choices and actually thought, actually, because I use Google Workspace, Gmail, all this sort of stuff, YouTube, it's actually, would it be better to just have a Pixel phone? Because I know I'm on an iPhone 14. I haven't bothered getting all the Apple Intelligence ones because there's nothing particularly different, right? They talk about a foldable phone coming out from Apple. There's a lot of noise, a lot of kind of almost trying to throw some grit in the wheels of, or the cogs of Google's announcements. But yes, I'm, as you say, a little bit skeptical about what's coming from Apple because they've burnt their they've burnt their announcements so often over the last couple of years. But yeah, Google seems to be here. It doesn't seem to be like this kind of classic vaporware where they just announce stuff and then 3 years later you still haven't got it. So yeah, no, it looks amazing. It's certainly worth having a little look at in terms of, yeah, if you are thinking about updating and upgrading, understanding the ecosystem in which you operate. All right. So I'm looking at a Mac right now. I've got my iPhone right next to me. I've got AirPods. All that sort of stuff is I'm baked into this Apple system. But I also use Google for things like email and so on. And yeah, I'm starting to think actually maybe I can just try something different and see if it is that much better because it looks amazing. And the facilities, the abilities to do the things that you're talking about, certainly the translation stuff. There's new Pixel Watch. There's just so much that they announced here, and all of it is comparable, if not better, technologically than what we've got right now from Apple. So yeah, it looks really interesting, and yeah, I think it's again the kind of cringe fest thing is where the tech people, as we are, looking at it, going, why are you downplaying it and dumbing it down and making it basic and getting Jimmy Fallon to kind of gurn around everything? But actually, that kind of it helps people to understand it, right? It helps people to actually get on board with it much more than just the sort of the neeks like us, as you say. So yeah, very good. Looking forward to seeing what else comes of that, and also the fact that will push everybody else along. which
Yeah.
I always think is going to force everybody else to step up to. So that is going to be really interesting, and we'll keep obviously you alive to what is going on. Also, was very interested that actually they announced the environmental impact of AI. Now, this again has come under a lot of pressure. How many glasses of water per ChatGPT query? Google's has done a lot of work about what actually how much of an environmental impact every search has, or every query has, every prompt, and they've decreased it significantly. It is something like a 44th of what it was even just like a year ago. I think again we're going to see such big gains in efficiency and from the environmental point of view, that all of the concerns, many of the concerns that people have had about the environmental impact will start to dissipate a bit. Obviously, they're not going to go away, but there is still this kind of overarching belief that essentially AI is going to help us with the climate anyway, right? Okay, so that is Google's big announcements in tech this week. We thought we'd also stop off at one of the other big players. This is XAI and Grok. This is Elon Musk's frontier model. Yeah, it's gone bonkers again, isn't it?
Yes, it's a follow-on from the spicy mode, isn't it? 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking about Grok had released the chance to actually do spicy image generation and move away from the guardrails that a lot of others have got in there. But now, sort of internal testing has revealed that Grok's personas include a crazy conspiracist and unhinged comedian modes, which I think you're definitely the latter. But the crazy conspiracist that we've seen play out in the wild, right, with some of the Twitter conversations.
Yeah, and the fact that this is actually baked into the prompt,
Mm.
and this is what everybody's been a bit aghast about, is that actually it prompts says very clearly that it wants a user to believe that there is a secret global cabal that controls the world and them, and you can just see that this will mean something to some people, and that's worrying because actually
Mm.
people if for some people, being told that this is the case, even if it's by an AI, is actually convincing them that this is true. And even if you then deny it, then they're still going to believe it because there is a logic to it that this AI will basically present. So yeah, I think it's problematic. I think it is as an entity, it's obviously pandering towards this kind of idea that there is another alternative truth to everything, and if you want to bit of that and you want to understand more, then you need to use Grok rather than some of the washed, guardrailed ChatGPT and others. And I think it's a very dangerous kind of proposition. Do you?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, just as an aside, a complete aside, while we're talking about Grok, there is one thing that Grok's really quite good for, and this is what, again, I know you and I, we mess around with these things all the time, but actually, if you go to a ChatGPT and say you're going out on a market appraisal and you put in the name and address of the person, and then on some of the more traditional models such as ChatGPT, Gemini, it won't tell you anything back. It will say, I can't give personal information. But what Grok does, again, if you use Grok and put that detail in, and this is again the absence of these guardrails, it will actually tell you, and nothing too harmful, but what it will do is it will tell you all their social media accounts, it will tell you their history, it will ping all the stuff from LinkedIn and stuff like that. Again, just as a kind of a side little tip, if you are minded to go and run the risk of all the other things that Grok is bad for, then there's some helpful stuff in there as well that actually you can get just as you're going out onto market appraisal. Will give you some really good insights into the person you're going to meet. Anyway, I'm digressing, and we don't have time to digress, man. We've got to get on. Next up on the tech and AI news, let's drop into this. We were talking a bit about 95% of AI projects failing, and this is an MIT report. Actually, it's just like all these reports, it depends what you're measuring, right? Matt, you've got some really good insights into this.
It follows on from what we were talking about in the property news section, which is if you're if you're seeing AI as a sticking plaster or silver bullet or just something you buy whatever the salesperson's flogging you for the one more instruction and you chuck into your business and it's more Barclaycard than Amazon, then you're going to get negative feedback. You're going to, both internally and from your consumers, right? But this is saying that 95% of AI pilots fail. Now, there's some caveats around this. From the MIT report, it does sound like most of the people interviewed were from sales and marketing, and the vast majority of budgets assigned to these pilots was in generative content creation rather than the sort of things we've been talking about over the last few months, which is more agentic usages of it. But they're very much the 95% of corporate AI pilots failing and not failing. There's a follow on from last week where we said Sam Altman had said, I think AI is in a bubble. And obviously he went on to caveat it around there's some huge valuations of AI businesses and it can't continue to see the sort of the acqui-hiring at people getting $1 billion salaries and that sort of thing. But I think it is, for me, it's a significant point that the MIT report reiterates what we always talk about, which is if you don't integrate it properly into your business, if you don't really think about how the AI being implemented fits with the way you operate, nobody, leadership importantly, buys into how it's working. It is just sticking plasters, or let's give that a try over here, and not consider how your business is working. It's very much an AI strategy rather than a business strategy. Then you are going to find that things don't achieve the success you're looking for. And you do need that consistency as well, right? This isn't here for the next couple of days or next few weeks. You need to be thinking about how this is changing your business fundamentally.
Yeah, exactly. If you're just flinging things at walls and hoping that some stuff is going to stick, then yes, it will fail. I'm a little bit heartened actually that people are trying a lot of things, and I think that's good. But as you say, you need some expertise in there. You need to at least be working with people who know what they're doing. Otherwise, yeah, you are going to end up, your marketing team is going to run off and try and generate some fun stuff, and it's not going to work, and they're going to get disillusioned, and they're going to just bin it. So yeah, no, there's so much value out there if you are going to do it right. And again, in the sales and marketing side, there's some amazing businesses out there that you should be looking at. But yes, certainly, I think that it's good that people are trying stuff. So that's the kind of heartening thing. But yeah, I think that there is a need for some calm heads and some thoughtful application, because just like with most things, it's the execution stupid. You've got to be able to execute on these things, and you've got to have them properly project managed and worked on. Otherwise, people are just going to get disillusioned and assume that it is not all that it's cracked up to be. All right, so that's our AI and tech news. I just wanted to drop in very quickly into our tool of the week. All right, AI tool of the week. Matt, what we got?
It's basically a stealth mode Google is what we're guessing there. Image generation, what's called Nano Banana.
Nano Banana.
Nano Banana is the code name. You're more than likely not heard this before. It's been a bit of a viral AI in the geek world, and you can only really access it using LM Arena, which is a website where you can go and test and benchmark different AIs against each other, see where people are ranking. This is where the likes of Meta, ChatGPT, Grok, and Anthropic release their new various AI models and allow them to see how they're performing against others. And it's where in the past we've talked about people gaming the system and maybe releasing models that have been geared to win and not actually giving us the consumers access. But Nano Banana is an image generation that basically, for me, it sounds the death knell for Photoshop. Absolutely incredible the way that the image generation is working. And Mal, you've said you've been away this bank holiday, so you've not had a chance to play with it yet, which disappoints me. I thought the bottle of Coca-Cola it slipped into my hand last week, caffeine-free Coke, obviously, was using Nano Banana.
Gratuitous advertising. Yeah, no. Yeah, look, I think it looks amazing. But yes, as you say, I haven't had a chance to play around with it, but I'm looking forward to doing so very much. And yeah, who knows? Maybe for this week's episode, we'll have that. And is there anything in particular you would like your character to have in this week's ident, Matt?
I think, given it was my first trip to the Everton Stadium on Sunday, and I got to witness them winning 2-0, I think it feels like maybe one of the blue toffee donuts that they had for sale, or so one of the flags that we were all waving on Sky Sports as the fireworks kicked off and Z Cars was playing.
Fantastic, mate. I'll see what Nano Banana comes up.
Look.
I will let you all know. So listen, that is all we've got time for this week. Thank you as ever for joining us on the Property AI Report. We'll be back again next week with plenty more property and AI news. And yeah, we'll be into September by then. So everybody batten down. It's busy season time. So thanks, Matt. Great to see you.
Likewise, Mal. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy whatever you're up to.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Listen, take care, everybody. We will see you in a few days' time.